Elevate TV, advancing kingdom lifestyle.
Welcome to Friday Morning Digest. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Arnold Orono, and I have a guest with me today who I will bring to the set in a few minutes. But I just want to welcome you and to appreciate you and to thank you for joining us today. We continue our journey to 2022, focusing on the youth and asking ourselves, how can the church engage and how do we equip our youth for a season such as this? So please feel free, as you're there, to leave behind your digital footprint. Tell us that you're there. Acknowledge, comment on one or two of the things that we're discussing. Give us your thoughts, give us your feedback, and we'll be glad to incorporate some of your ideas into what we are doing. But for now, allow me to introduce our guest today to the set, and he's none other than Frank Wairicu, but I'll allow him to introduce himself and tell us a bit about himself. Karibu.
Thank you so much, Pastor Orono, and it's good to be invited to this show. I really appreciate the fact that you could have me on this show today. Yeah, my name is Francis Wairicu, and I am a life coach, and besides that, I am a father, a husband, a grandfather by extension.
A grandfather, wow, okay.
Yeah, by extension.
By extension.
Yeah, by extension.
Yeah.
And I have a background in the printing and publishing industry, where I've been for a long time. And after that, I transited into coaching, which is what I do, personal development coaching, and trying to help people get into or become better, better versions of themselves.
Okay,
yes,
thank you, Francis. So I hope today you'll help us as a church to become a better version of ourselves. Yes, just recently in the papers, there's been this whole discussion on the Pandora Papers. I think that has been the talk of the town this week. You know, there's been a lot of talk in media. The First family was implicated in these papers. Just to get us off the ground, what are your thoughts? Just your basic observations on this.
Right, my thoughts on the Pandora Papers are quite interesting, because I realized in one of our tribes, our dialects in this country, that Apondo and Pando are related to something. So when somebody says a Pandora, means they're hiding. Oh, wow. And that was profound, because how is it that a Pandora box has some things that are not known inside there? But when it comes back to the papers that were released, I think, in my view, this is another can of worms that has been released. And why do I say that? Because when you release a can of worms, one of the things that you do is maybe not further push it. Because when you push it further, now there are things that are going to get worse other than being resolved. But having said that, the papers talked about the offshore accounts, which are completely different from what we would call foreign accounts. Because many Kenyans and many other people have foreign accounts. Yeah, you have a child studying in the US, they have an account there. So the offshore accounts are a bit different, but I would say at this point in time that, in my view, it is not illegal to have an account offshore. It's not illegal for you to do business and stash your money somewhere where you can get some better bargain. But it would be bad if that money was stolen, if that money was taken from in a way that was not proper. That is where the issue would be. But in my view, I don't think it's a very big issue when it comes to that.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's an interesting opinion. I think I share the same thoughts, that that having that money by itself outside the country is not illegal. Maybe I think somebody raised issues of immorality. It might not be illegal, but it's immoral, you know. And sometimes I think it's an issue of language here. But also, my observation has been that this is being politicized, so everybody and their twin brothers, a friend of mine would say, is, talking about this and throwing stones and, and I ask myself, should we just wait a bit until the full picture is clear before we make comments? Should we wait a bit until the full picture has been painted? Because we are saying people are guilty before they've been, tried in a court of law, as it were, or they are guilty before we've had the full story. I think everybody needs to have their right of reply. But because of the political events of 2022, people are just trying to take advantage of this and trying to twist it, everybody trying to twist it to favor their position, and I'm just asking, as the church, how do we need to respond to that? Especially when the politician engages with this and makes it sometimes bigger than it is. In yesterday's papers, and maybe this is part of firefighting, the government talked about over 400 government officials have, I'm not sure whether it was offshore accounts or foreign accounts, but have accounts outside the country, and they have to get permission from the ethics and anti-corruption community for that to happen. So I think it was still a measure of firefighting, but it's also trying to make us aware of the fact that the first family is not alone. There are other people who have offshore accounts, have accounts, similar to what the first family has. And maybe, again, in the next few weeks, we'll begin to hear other names beginning to pop up and in a similar situation. I'm not too sure what your thoughts are. Maybe we'll hear Francis Wairicu has an offshore account.
Yeah, it could be in some of those papers.
Yes.
But that's where it gets interesting when it is politicized. Yeah. Because when it gets into the political dimension, then that's when you realize that people are looking for specific names. Yeah, they want to see whose name is, and you realize that the players are the same. When an issue crops up, they want to see is so-and-so's name in there. And you see, by so doing, we don't get to the bottom or to the heart of this thing. We don't get to solve anything because we politicize everything. And of course, we know politicians can be loud. If they decide to be loud, they can be very loud. True, yeah. And at times, the loudest looks like the one that is correct. So when it's politicized, we don't get the benefit of knowing exactly what happened, and something is shelved under the rug.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. So that means that the fact that your favorite politician has not been named does not necessarily mean that they are innocent. Maybe we need to wait a bit and see what happens, whether who appears on the plate and who is named amongst the, amongst the people who have those accounts and, and so on. Just moving on, one of the issues that has been raised, and I think has been this whole aspect of, if you're a civil servant and you are found having offshore accounts, or you're found, that by itself is not illegal, as we've said earlier, but the question becomes, what kind of role model are you? You seem to be demonstrating a certain pattern of life and influencing, because a civil servant, especially public leaders, influence the next generation. They don't just influence by what they say, they also influence by what they do. And it brings the whole aspect of whether the politicians that we have, whether we have positive role models amongst them. And we are talking today about the youth vote. How important is it to have good role models for this generation?
Having good role models for this generation is quite important, and it's let me say it's very important, in the sense that let me just give it a twist. When the pandemic hit the globe, people were not going to work, and some people felt hopeless. They had no direction. They didn't know what would happen next. But what I realized is that most of them went back to what their parents had taught them.
Wow. For
those who knew how to bake, they started baking to make some money. For those who had seen their parents do some little business, we saw people who were senior people in their own institutions, or maybe from the corporate world, going to the farms, bringing fresh produce and selling beside the road. Some of them started making chapatis. And what I would say is, you see, that's something that they saw when they were growing up. And they stayed afloat for some time when the pandemic was there. When people were losing hope, they had something to do. And that's how role modeling does. You see, we look at the way people are behaving, the way people are doing their things, and it inspires, and it inspires us in a way to a point that we desire to be like them. But the question is now, have our politicians become very good role models? The answer to that question is they have not been. Most of them have not been very good role models, because one of the issues that we have is that we've seen our politicians getting away with so much. And I think that's one of our problems. We talk too much. Yeah, you tell us, I am going to do this, but at the end of it all, you don't get to do it. You've talked about issues. When issues of maybe are being investigated or something has been somebody has been mentioned somewhere, instead of taking the action that needs to be taken, at times we start talking. And in the process of talking, like I said, politicians can be loud. Now, when they become louder than you, you just shut up, and then that issue just freezes like that. And so we've not seen very good role models, apart from the fact that that when you get into politics, the youth should see somebody who was maybe let me use this word, a nobody, rising up in an area of influence, an area of power, an area where they can direct a few things, a few affairs, and that is something that the youth desire. And so youth can be swayed in different directions very easily. And so it's very important for us to have role models, but we need to understand that youth can be influenced positively, but they can also be influenced negatively. Yeah, because the age bracket is around 15 years to 24, thereabout. Of course, some people say 35.
35, up to that.
35.
I'm in
yeah,
that age.
Yeah, I'm also a youth.
Yes.
Yeah, people say that. But you see, from 15 down here, those are the formation years. That is when they are seeking for answers. They need direction. There's so much around them. Like you read Daniel chapter 12 and verse 4. It talks about some knowledge explosion. A time will come, he was told, shut the book until the time of the end. And that time, people will be running to and fro, seeking for knowledge. So there's a lot of knowledge out there. The youth need it, but what type of knowledge are they getting? Is it being channeled in the right way? It's like electricity. A very good servant, but if you use it wrongly, then it can cause a lot of chaos.
Excellent. I'm just wondering, as you're talking, negative role models seem to carry the day. You know, if somebody's doing, there's been this story that if a dog bites a man, nobody will talk about it. But if a man bites a dog, it will be in the news all day. Negative role models really seem to carry the day. You know, if you've been following news recently, some of our local executives, as it were, in government, in the county government, have been talking about how they are being beaten and how, they're having children with this man who's already married to this man, and it already married to this woman, and it carries a lot of influence. It's almost like that's what the papers have been waiting for, to carry that fodder, Why is it that negative role models really get a lot of prime time or get a lot of airtime, whereas positive role models are difficult to come across? And every young man wants to be, or every young woman wants to be like the negative role model. Is it a reflection of our thinking? Is it a reflection of our value system? Is it because of we are sinners? What
by
is
nature.
It? By nature. Yes, by birth. What is it? Yeah.
No, I think when it comes to what I would call celebrity status, and those are the role models that people really follow. People who are in the limelight, people who are in the papers all the time. I think they do a lot of work in that sense, in getting every opportunity to say where they were, what they have, and such things, the kind of life that they are living. And on the flip side, I think the positive role models have not spoken a lot. And they should. But I was asking myself a question. Even in our churches, we teach about humility. Now, does it have an effect? Probably when I've broken even and I have this much and I'm talking about it, am I trying to brag, or should I be humble? How do we understand this word humble? So what I think is that the positive role models have not been given enough airtime. They have not been given enough publicity, because like you said, it's not news. Yeah, this guy, he went through the right channels and he did what he did. It's not news. But when somebody comes from rags to riches in a fortnight, then that becomes news. And that is what some of the young people are drawn into. But it's a lie. It's a fallacy. It's not something, it's not real. Because look at the celebrities that we have, and especially those ones in the entertainment industry, most of them do not even last for long. You look at the lifespan of maybe a runner in our country. Yeah, we have runners in our country.
Yeah.
How long do they last? Give them 5 years. Now, I think the coaches have done a lot of work, very good work, in coaching them on the track. But I ask myself a question. Who has coached them? Who are the role models that they have in life? Because we have seen at the end of it all, some of them end up as paupers. Some of them crash. Some of them get into drugs. And we ask, what happened? Yeah, if you try to look at our runners from the 70s, you ask yourself, who are these that are doing well? And you realize that there are very few. And so we need people who are going to direct the youth, channel them in the right direction. If they need financial coaches or maybe management coaches, or apart from the track, like they need to do and pursue that line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see you shifting our conversation to your to your area of strength. But by the way, that's a very good point, because the question then becomes who are their models, who are their mentors, who develop them. So are you suggesting then that part of the challenge that we're having is, especially when I look at the musicians, you know, a lot of musicians start off very well. When they are young, you know, they are very passionate for God, and we could name names here. You know, they are zealous for God. Then as they get fame, as they get prominence, as they get influence, they seem to shift. You know, all of a sudden they become, can we call them wife snatchers? You know, snatching somebody else's wife and making that your own wife. All of a sudden we begin to have all these beefs in the papers and so on and so forth. Is it a problem then of mentoring, of coaching, of training, or is it that, look, man is a sinner, man is an unbeliever, man is like this, there's no hope?
You see, it also goes down to values. The values that we have instilled in our children, in our young people. And like I mentioned during the COVID season, you see the ones that I've mentioned have modeled their parents and the things that they saw. There are some who have seen different things, and they started snatching phones, snatching handbags. So who are they modeling at that particular time? And because it's very hard for somebody, a young person who has been shown and been trained in good morals, to go that direction. And so there's a lot that has not been done in terms of really getting to teach them or to show them the direction. Because what is mentoring? Mentoring is journeying with them, is walking with them, and showing them that, yeah, at times it's going to get tough. Yeah, Socrates said a life without discipline is an insane life. You see, some of them are living very insane lives. Or I would put it, then a life without discipline, then you're living like a madman. Yeah, because if you don't have discipline, then it means you have not been taught what discipline is about. And that's why somebody would take a direction that is not right. But if you have been taught on proper values, there are areas that you would not go. Like, I would want to believe with this social media generation, the Facebook generation and the likes, people want likes. Yeah, for you to get likes, some people do some very crazy things. Yeah, you do something crazy so that you may get likes, or maybe viewership. You want people to view, and so you just put up a story that is not even true. You're ready to spoil your name just to get likes. Yeah, and you see, that is something, as long as it's making you money, you don't care, and that's not the way to go. And that's why some of them are crashing, because once they have seen the money, they put their values aside, and they decide, oh, as long as I'm getting the money, I don't care, and I'm living okay, I'm okay. But what they don't show us is the end product. Many of them don't end very well. After their stint has ended, they don't end very well. And that's the part that they don't show us. I used to make a joke a long time ago that the companies that sell alcohol, they would show you all those fancy things, nyama choma and all that, but they wouldn't show you somebody who is in a ditch. A guy who has slept in a ditch because he was drunk. They would not show you somebody who is throwing because they took some alcohol. And you see, that's the hype that is there. But what is the real thing? That's what we need to ask ourselves.
Okay.
Does it last? Or is it something that is just superficial?
Nice, nice. Some good points there. I'm just thinking about going back to some of our leaders, some of our current leaders, for example, who, if I pick your argument, you know, they were part of the CU. I remember even our former president, you know, one of our former presidents was a born-again president. And yet there are question marks about the end of his legacy, whether he wound up the same way as he had begun, you know. So is there a problem, even within what I'd call the institution of the church, in terms of mentoring, in terms of modeling? Because if you talk about value systems, many of these people started very, very well in terms of their value systems. I'm back again to even some of our politicians today. Again, I could name names. They started very, very well in terms of their value systems. But somehow when they got there, they detached from those value systems. Something went wrong somewhere. Is it that the mentorship they received was not strong enough, was not deep enough? Is it a question of spiritual warfare? You know, Apostle usually sits on this seat and he talks about the prayer angle. Is it a problem of spiritual warfare? How would you address that so that those who are engaged in youth ministry and working with the youth would be able to deal with that?
You see, birds of a feather flock together. But I would add that birds of a feather also land on the same tree. Now, it all depends on the flock that you're working with. You may have received very good values. You may have been taught very good values. But if you choose to walk or to flock with the wrong birds, then you're going to land on the tree that they're going to land on. Yeah, for some of us, we know what that means. We were raised in the villages. We knew how you'd see many birds coming and they would land on one tree. Maybe some of them in the city wouldn't know what you're talking about because there are no trees here.
There are no trees.
But birds of a feather flock together. And you see, bad values, the Bible says, they corrupt what? Good morals. So somebody may be having very good morals, bad company corrupts good morals. So they could be having some very good values, but they choose to work with the wrong company. That company will influence the way they behave. It will influence the way they think. And somebody said, show me your friends, and I'll show you who you will become. If you're working with 10 millionaires, maybe you're going to be the 11th. But if you're working with some people who don't have morals, 5 of them, you're going to be the 6th. And so that is very important. You could have been taught those morals, but did you maintain them? You have a responsibility as a person to believe that what you were taught was good. And it should be your direction in your life. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so they can deviate from that if they keep the wrong company, because there is also some influence on that other side. Yeah, what are you seeking to gain? Yeah, maybe a long time we used to be taught that a good name is better than riches, but today we say riches are better than a good name. Yeah. So what is your choice? Do you want to keep your good name, or do you want to follow the riches? And yes, being rich is not a bad thing per se. You see, when I say that, somebody might say, maybe it's because, but the thing is, it's not wrong. You can still be rich and have very good morals. Yes, it's good to be clear about that.
Excellent. Yeah. I love that discussion. One of the things that I just wanted to add maybe to that is the fact that maybe also we need to inoculate our youth. And when I say our, I'm talking about within the church context, you know, we need to inoculate our youth against, you know, things like wealth and begin to inculcate values of hard work. I've had this argument many times that in the US, one of the things that they've sought to inculcate is that value of hard work. So whether you're a cleaner of a toilet or you're the CEO of a company, they both respect each other because everybody has something to do. You know, but in our environment, being a CEO is, you know, is the name of the game. A young man once told me that image is everything. For a young man, image is everything. And maybe we need to begin to think about how can we vaccinate them, you know, against this image is everything culture, and begin to get their eyes focused on that which is, you know, that which is true and that which is genuine. And if we as a church don't engage in that and don't begin to do that, then there's a danger that we could easily miss out on this generation, and they could easily miss out on their destiny and their calling. I know there are many young guys who started off very, very well, but this desire for wealth and desire to get rich, I mean, why are we snatching handbags? Why are we snatching people's phones, you know, and many of them have ended up, you know, being shot by police on the wayside. Is it a question of they grew up in church, but they are not inoculated, you know? I have a young man, a close friend of mine, who grew up in one of these low-income areas, and he knows many of his friends who did not make it to that stage, you know, and I think that's a discussion that we need to have as we continue. But otherwise, we have come to a break. I just want to encourage you to stay tuned to this station. I will be back in a few minutes. Don't go away. Thank you.
Young people want names, titles, papers, like diplomas. I want a degree, money to do this, money to do this. Let me tell you, we need to stop and start.
Bishop Henry Molandi.
Ushuhuda ya leo, mimi sijui iko na nini.
Haileti watu hawalii.
Kwa sababu wengi anasema hii akiwa na aim hii yake si ya watu waokoke.
Without a title.
Now, when you talk about title, that is one thing we feared and avoided and hated.
At what point can you say that there was a major breakout?
I would long for a touch of God after preaching for days, and I would go out for some days to pray and fast on my own.
We are back. Thank you for joining us and thank you for staying tuned to this channel. We are continuing our conversation on the journey to 2022. Again, we're still exploring the youth factor. And today we are talking about issues of role modeling, you know, and how important it is for this generation to have positive role models. During the break, we were talking with Francis, and Francis was giving me the story of Mike Tyson and how Mike Tyson, the different mentors and the different role models that Mike Tyson had in his life. Maybe we could pick up from there and you could just share a bit about that story.
Yeah, Mike Tyson was a young man who grew up in the streets. He had a very unfortunate background, living in the streets, doing drugs and all that. And then one time, in one of his gangs, he used to love doves, pigeons, the pigeons or doves. So he loved those birds, and one of those bullies, the bigger boys, took one of the doves and broke its neck. And Mike Tyson got so angry, and he really beat up that boy. And that's when Cass D'Amato noticed this young man, and he said, this young man is going to become a world champion. And so he took him home, he started working with him, he started training him, he started mentoring him. And every time Mike Tyson had a moment to himself, Cass would force him to go to the gym and just work out. And so he trained him in so many things. He trained him in how, it was not just punching. Even looking at you, Mike Tyson knew before you started fighting, he knew he had already beaten you, just by looking at you. Those are things that he had been trained. But, and so he became a champion at 19.
Yeah.
I remember he had like 36 unbeaten matches in a row. And I was like, oh, this guy. But what happened after Cass D'Amato, his mentor, died? When his mentor died, he took up a promoter. He didn't want mentoring again. So he took a promoter who would promote him and show the hype and all that. And that's how Mike Tyson crashed. Because whatever Cass D'Amato, his mentor, had stopped him from taking, like alcohol, women, and all those things, the guy indulged in those things. And that's when he was beaten. We remember his story, that he was beaten, some heavy punches were landed on him by Evander Holyfield until he had no option. He had to use his teeth. And he beat Evander Holyfield's ear twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you see this lobe is very hard. It's very hard, but the guy beat it twice and he cut it off. Frustration. And he has never been the same again.
Wow.
I remember his words one time. He said, I've been a failure all my life. So you ask yourself, a failure? with all that fame, he said, I will die alone with my secrets. It was a very sad statement that Mike Tyson made, that he's going to die alone. He feels like a nobody. He wants to disappear from himself. Very sad.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
I think that's a very nice story. I mean, what it raises is looking for a mentor versus looking for a promoter, you know, and a lot of our young people seem to be looking for promoters rather than mentors.
True.
You know, why do you think? I mean, let's pick Mike Tyson as an example. What happened? When Cass Diamato died, why did he go for Don King? Was it because Don King flashed the money before him, showed him the cars, showed him the potential that he had in terms of the financial potential? What do you think happened?
Yeah, made him believe, and also made him believe what he was missing. Yeah, this is what you are missing. I'll give it to you. But of course, at the end of it all, you realize that Mike Tyson went to court when he realized how much he had been fleeced in terms of cash. A lot of money was made from him that he never got, and so he felt cheated. But look at it this way, because we are talking about the church. Jesus, our Savior, used to teach in parables. And there's a parable that I like giving about the parable of the pencil. And for those believers who are looking for it in the Bible, they may not find it.
Unless it is Francis's Bible.
Yeah. So
Yes.
it's a parable of the pencil. And this parable is about the pencil maker. After he had made the pencil and was ready to release it to the market, he called the pencil aside and said, I want to give you some instructions before you go to the marketplace. And he said, number one, I want you to know that when you go out there, that you're going to receive some painful sharpening. And that sharpening will make you better. Number two, you're only going to be useful if you allow somebody to hold you by the hand, because a pencil lying on the table is not useful. And so allow somebody to hold you by the hand, and that's how you're going to be useful. He said, in life you're going to make mistakes, but you have an opportunity to erase them when you realize it's a mistake and take the right direction. Number four, he said, what is more important is what is inside you. It's not what is on the outside. You see, when we talk about celebrity status, we are showing, oh, this is my ride. You're just showing the outside. But what is more important is what is in you. And he also said, you're going to leave a mark on every surface that you will touch. And so when somebody has been mentored, they have allowed themselves to be held by the hand by somebody else. And in the long run, they're going to be people who are going to leave a mark in society. They're going to leave a mark in somebody's life. They're going to leave a mark in their own lives or even in their own families because they allowed themselves to be mentored. Of course, mistakes are going to be there. Let us allow ourselves to be sharpened. When you're rebuked, like for example, you're in a church, do you leave the church because you got rebuked? Do you leave the company because you were corrected? Allow yourself to go through the painful sharpening so that you may correct the areas that you're in. So that parable, the pencil maker said, now you're ready to go to the market. So we can allow ourselves, as the young people, we can allow ourselves to hold them by the hand, but they must also allow themselves to be held by the hand so that it benefits them in their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that parable. Excellent parable. Excellent parable. Where do you think we're missing it then as a church? You know, because sometimes I feel like the church has not understood, maybe I could be wrong on this, but the church has not understood or grasped certain aspects of, especially of the youth and the importance of the youth as we go forward. Even if we've not missed it, how would you, if you are a pastor or if you are a leader or if you're talking to church leaders, what do you tell them? What kind of advice would you give them about the youth, the importance of the youth, and how they can build organizations that mentor solid, sound youth?
Yeah, I believe the church needs to do a lot more. They have done something, but they are yet to do a lot more, because going by the results, we can see so many of our youth starting very well, but in the process, they get, maybe some of them feel like, this is boring. There's life out there. So maybe we need to understand them. Maybe we are giving them stuff that belonged to the 70s or the 60s and insisting that that is the way to go. Yet we know things have really changed in terms of the way people live, in terms of technology, in terms of information. There's a lot that they know. There's a lot that they come across in their daily lives. There's what they call the in thing, where they think our folks, our fellows are enjoying much more than we are, and we are wasting time in church. And so we need to come up with something that will be appealing to the youth. Appealing to them in a sense that they are doing kingdom business in terms of how they address things in their lives. They are more responsible, because responsibility is also an issue, because you will agree with me that in the recent past, people have reached a point where they get desperate and they take their lives. And you ask yourself, why is this happening? And if you ask me, I will tell you it's somebody has given up, and they already see themselves as old people. Like, for example, the Bible tells us that at least 70 years. You've been given 70 years, and if you go beyond that, that's a bonus. And so they've already seen themselves in their 80s, and they decide now there's nothing to live for. Now, if there's nothing to live for, the question is, are we giving our young people hope? Are we giving them or raising them in a way where they become responsible, where they can inspire others, where they can deal with issues and obstacles that come in their lives? Because that is very important. Because if we do everything for them, they may not grow in that sense. So at times it's good to train them, to mentor them, but also allow them to get a feel of how it feels to be in that particular situation. Because at times we move with assumptions. Like, for example, if you've been given an opportunity to speak the word in your church as a young person today, it doesn't mean you've become a preacher. You're in training. I like giving this example that in the time of Balaam, when the donkey spoke, he didn't continue being a prophet. It got back to being a donkey. So it's not a one-time thing. Yeah. So when you're given the opportunity, don't allow yourself to continue to learn, because believe you me, if you have never done it before, if it is given for you, if it's left for you maybe for a month, you will not have something to say unless you have grown to that level. So it's not about theory. There's a way to go about it. So we need to teach them, but at the same time help them and give them an opportunity to exercise what we are teaching them. Yeah.
You know, for my master's degree, I did my thesis revolved around youth, especially millennials in the workplace, and we were comparing millennials versus Generation X, you know, and how they respond to different, let me call it workplace stimuli. You know, and one of the things that one of the people I interviewed mentioned, which stuck with me, was the fact that even amongst the millennials, and the millennials are those born after 1980 or 1982, depending on who you're listening to, they mentioned that they discovered that those who married early, had children, those who are responsible, were very, very different from those who are single. And they say that responsibility has a way of toning them down. You know, responsibility has a way of sort of slowing them down. And I think sometimes one of the things that makes the youth vote such an elusive vote is really because many of them at that stage in life are not responsible. You know, you don't have a family, you don't have children. I mean, if you have no family, you can decide today to wake up and go and register in, you know, in Mombasa and vote in Mombasa. There's nothing that ties you down. But if you have a family, you can't just stand up and go. You know, you have to think about this child that I'm leaving behind, this wife that I'm leaving behind, how will they eat, where will they go to, etc., etc. So what you've raised, I think, is a key issue. You know, issues of responsibility. If we can begin to empower them, you know, give them more responsibility at a younger age. That is one of the keys to shifting and changing the mindsets. Would you comment on that?
It's one of the things, you just said that, and I remembered something in my younger days when I got to 18. My dad knew quite a lot of people, and I wanted to get an ID. So I told my dad, why don't you just pick a form for me, so that I just fill it in, and then you return it to the chief to go and do the stamping and all that. Because all those people, they used to interact with all those people. But my dad refused. And that's one of the things that I really appreciate today, that my dad refused to pick those forms for me. I had to do it myself. And where those days, the roads were not as they are today. Where the chief was, you'd ride a bike for almost an hour for you to get to the chief. and you're not going there one day. I went there 3 times. I was like, this is hard, Mateso. But you see, today I appreciate that my dad allowed me to take responsibility in that area at that particular time. And it allowed me to learn. It allowed me to grow, to know how to address things myself, to go and talk to the chief. After that, the chief would wake up in the morning and find me at his home.
Wow.
And he's like, what are you doing here? I need something from you. And you see, that shaped me to some level. And so that's why I'm saying it's good for them to be allowed to do some of this stuff. And we're going to watch how they're doing it. As we watch them, we know where to correct, we know where to strengthen, and we know which direction we are going to allow them to go to.
Excellent. I think one of the challenges we've had also is we shelter them too much.
True.
You know, we shelter those of us who are parents. I try as much as possible to avoid sheltering my daughter too much. Well, she's your daughter, you know, so the tendency is you want to protect her from harm. But sometimes I think it's good to expose them to the winds, expose them to, you know, help them to make decisions. I'm not sure what challenges you've had, but one of the challenges I have had is it's been difficult for my daughter to make a decision. So I ask her, what do you want to do? And she says, I don't know. You know, it's not clear. And a lot of my friends seem to have had the same issue. So I realized that maybe we are making too much decisions for them, and we need to give them the room to make their own decisions and tell them that there are consequences of making that decision.
True.
So if you make this decision, you eat the cake that you made, you know. If you made this decision to go this direction or to do this, then at the end of the day, whatever prices need to be paid, you pay the price for that. But this generation, the millennials, and I think the generation coming after that, they call Generation Z, one of the arguments has been that they've been protected too much. You know, when we grew up, TV used to start at what time? Was it at 5?
At 4, 5.
Yes, in the evening.
And then close at midnight.
Yes. And so you had to find ways of entertaining yourself. But these days, TV is 24/7. And that has its influence on this generation. And we need to find a way of just, you know, stopping to shelter them too much, allowing them to experience the vagaries, allowing them to experience the winds and the waves. And that will help shape their thinking. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. And part of our entertainment then was also books, storybooks, novels. We would read volumes and up to maybe 3 in the morning, using that, it was called a koroboi. Yeah, when you realize there's a lot of smoke in the house, that's when you realize, oh, it's 3 a.m. And so you get to sleep. And that was part of us. And Charlie Tremendous John said that you're going to be the same person 5 years from today, except for the books you read and the people that you meet. So the reading culture has also disappeared. It's not a form of entertainment anymore.
It's true.
Today you've talked about the channels. There are so many. You even wonder, which one am I going to watch? Yeah, like for me, TV has become like meaningless because you're so confused. There's so much out there. And that's the knowledge explosion that I was talking about. There's so much information. And the thing is, and this is a challenge that we have with our millennials today. With so much information, they know quite a lot, but they don't have depth. Superficial. So they're very shallow in some of the things that they know, but they know quite a lot. It's very wide, but not deep enough. And one of the things that I encourage them to do is to find something that you can study deeply. Because even when they get to the workplace, they're not going to be paid for the time. They're going to be paid for the value that they add in the workplace. And that's also a notion that I think that they are bringing in terms of even government, what government has done. There is money for the youth. I have seen the young people who don't want to go for that money. But when there are handouts by some politician, they run for that money. When there's a project where there's actual cash, they want to get the money and then share it among themselves and then wait for the next. You see, we are not building our youth in that sense. What we need to do is to grow them, teach them how to grow this thing, yeah, how to do it. Because if they don't know the how, then life will be surrounded by a lot of assumption, and for that, it's not going to be good for them. And the responsibility we're also talking about, it will be very difficult for them to hold a family, for example. if they were to have families. It becomes very difficult because they've not been responsible enough. And I've met quite a few. I've dealt with quite a few. And it's a very sorry state if you're not going to do something about it. So they need to do something. They need to understand something, but get into the depth of that thing so that they understand it very well. And that will give them a bargaining angle or a cutting edge in that industry. Yeah.
A big influencer also with this generation, and I think that was mentioned, especially as we run up to 2022, is the whole aspect of social media. You know, social media is now becoming a big thing as we think about 2022, as we think about the elections. How does the church begin to leverage on that space? Maybe just your thoughts, you know. How do we, first of all, not water down, I'm not sure whether that's the right word, but train our youth to, again, inoculate our youth against the negative social media influence and how to use social media positively, you know, because social media has its pluses and it has its minuses. Its minus, I think, is that there's so much information out there, like you're saying, that people are a mile wide and a centimeter deep, you know, have too much information, but no, they're not experts in that matter. But also, I think that the other negative about social media is that there's so much information out there that is negative, you know, and it has a way of finding itself into the hands of young people who are still impressionable and are still not formed their own sense of identity. How does the church step in to begin to push them in a positive direction, to begin to, you know, yes?
Yeah. Social media, I liken social media to a mob. Why do I say that? You see, when you're dealing with a mob, it's not easy to get the right perspective of things. Because one person, even in the Bible, great is Diana, you remember. These guys are shouting these guys, and you ask others, what are you shouting about? They don't even know.
They have no idea, yes, sir.
Yeah, but they're shouting. And why are they shouting? Maybe because they're meant to shout. Wow. Yeah? But now, social media, you see, people hide behind social media. You can find a young person insulting people on social media simply because you have not met the person, they don't even know you, they're just hiding behind, and it's a dangerous place. But how does the church now get into that? In my view, the church needs to be involved from the onset. Like, I can ask a question. How many churches have encouraged their members and their youth, mainly because that is a target group, to go and register as voters? Because the exercise was started just
recently.
Yeah, just recently.
Yeah.
How many have encouraged them to go and register? And then after that, get involved in the process. Do we tell them what direction to take? Has the church done enough to tell the people the kind of person, even without naming names? Yeah, because the church needs to be like an arbiter. You don't take sides. And when you study that word, arbiter is an onlooker, an eyewitness, or somebody who has been given a position to solve a dispute. Now, the church, as an arbiter, for example, what has it witnessed when it comes to the young people? Is it an onlooker? Now, being an onlooker is good. You don't get involved in the fight, but you look at what is going on. But there's a danger if the bystander syndrome, because an onlooker is a bystander, the bystander syndrome, if it gets into the church, because it means you're not going to do anything about it. But that is where now the church comes in. You don't dive in when things have become thick. Let us start the process from the beginning. Encourage them to register. Tell them the kind of person that we would want. What are the values we are looking for in our leaders? What are the morals that we are looking for? Because you're going to be somebody is going to try to influence you in this direction or this direction. Which direction should you take? Inform them. But you see, when it comes to mob psychology, if we allow them to go that direction, they just go anywhere, just because it's louder on that side. But if we were to tell them what we are looking for as a church, then the youth will find direction. My question is, why do the politicians come to the church? They understand that there is a big following in that place. Why has the church not tapped Why haven't they directed this big following to the direction that they should go to? The church also has a responsibility in terms of now uniting, in terms of deciding which direction they really want to go. And I like the stand that was taken recently by the church. Don't allow somebody to come there one day and now begin to influence different things just because of one day. Yet, if they are our members, we appreciate them. And we're not saying that we're going to disrespect them as a church. We're going to give them the respect due to them. But the thing is, if they are our members, we are going to direct them on how to go. We will give them an opportunity to talk to us. But if they're coming for political reasons, then that's a totally different thing. I think it should not be allowed in our churches. And the churches should give direction on the area that we need to head to.
Wow, okay. Yeah. Excellent thoughts. You know, a few weeks ago we were discussing with the Apostle about how, you know, the church in the U.S., especially during the 18th century, 18th century, I think, when they had just gotten independence, and 17th century, every time they'd come to an election, the church would always spend a few weeks before that election talking about the quality of leaders, like you're saying, that we should engage with. One of our guests here also mentioned about the 5 C's of leadership, you know, courage, competence, character. I'm not sure, I can't remember what the other C's were. But talk about the quality that we're looking for in leaders, so that we don't just pick somebody because they drive a flashy car. Unfortunately, they'll drive a flashy car, but they'll not be able to deliver in terms of their promises. You don't pick somebody because, you know, their wife has been taken out of a beauty pageant, you know, because many times, again, this youth thing is image. But if we can keep emphasizing, these are the qualities we're looking for in a leader. This is what we are looking for in terms of the, you know, the next generation, 2022, this is what we're looking for. And people begin to understand that and see the connection between leadership and their status, you know, leadership and the economy, leadership and, you know, and how their business will do. Then I think we'll begin to change the tide as the church. But as long as we are quiet, you know, as long as we're not sounding our voice, that is one. And as long as we are also getting into partisan politics, because a lot of our politics, and even in the church, unfortunately, look, we are human beings, you know. On one of the platforms I was on, somebody threw a YouTube, you know, chat about from one of the speakers who talk about corruption in the church. And unfortunately, look, the church is still human beings. We still have our strengths and we still have our weaknesses. But if we can begin to have that conversation and give some sense of direction, over time, the narrative will shift. And over time, I believe that we'll begin to inculcate our communities, our congregations with the right values. And I believe that we'll begin to see a shift, even in terms of our leadership. I think it's also important that amongst the youth, we also raise youth leaders, you know, because the youth listen to themselves more than they listen to somebody who's not from that generation. So it's so important that we, as a church, maybe just begin to think in terms of raising youth leaders. But we're coming to an end. Maybe you could give us, for 1 minute or so, just give us your, what are your parting shots? As we journey towards 2022, the youth vote is important. The youth vote is becoming increasingly critical. I think they say 75% of Kenya is 35 and under. You know, so that tells you how big a chunk that vote is. What are your parting shots? What did you say?
Okay, what I would say is, you see, in life you're either an example or a warning. When people see you, are you an example or are you a warning? So as a young person, do you want to become a warning or do you want to become an example? That when people see you, the alarm starts buzzing. You see, it's not a good way to live. And one guy called Easy Eddie, he used to work, he's a lawyer, he worked for Al Capone, defending him, and he earned quite some good money from those, defending those illicit businesses they were doing. But one time he decided and said, yeah, I have made a lot of money, I have taken my child to the best schools, and I have an estate to my name from what I've done, but what I've not given my child is a good example. And so he decided he's going to give his son a good example. But he knew that would cost him his life. But all the same, he decided to go to the authorities and say all the things that he had done, these guys had done. And true enough, after a year, the guy was shot. He died. But the son joined the military, and at some point when he had gone back to fuel his aircraft, he suddenly saw some planes from the Japanese attacking And he realized now this is serious business. And so he started fighting those guys. And he did everything he could, including trying to damage the wings of those particular jet fighters. At the end of it all, this young man managed, and he was awarded a great honor in the military. And after that, he was honored by one of the airports being named after him, the Badge O'Hare Airport.
Wow, okay.
Because the father had decided to give him a very good example. So in life, do you want to be a good example, or do you want to become a warning? Those are my parting shots.
Thank you very much, Bwana Wairicu. It's been great having you here. Gota. Thank you. I mean, you're such a rich treasure of information and stories. So we're grateful. We hope we will see you back soon. And ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of this discussion for today. We're talking about our journey to 2022, and we're asking ourselves about the youth vote and how we as a church can get more engaged with this youth vote. If those of us who are, are beyond the age of youth, we still have a responsibility. We still have a mandate. We still have a challenge that is before us. And that mandate and challenge that was put by Francis was the whole issue of just coaching this generation, walking with this generation, mentoring them, being a positive role model for them, voting wisely, because the way we vote and the way we walk with them will influence the way they respond to the prevailing winds. For those of us who are under the age of 35 and what we would consider to be youth, the question is, are you looking for a mentor or are you looking for a promoter? We need to watch out for people who are promoters in our lives and will give us what we need for now, but will end up destroying our lives forever. If you remember the story of Esau and Jacob, Esau lost his inheritance because of a pot of lentils. So let's get the right mentors, let's get the right people around us who will, at the end of the day, will give us a legacy that is worth leaving behind. Otherwise, the Lord bless you and the Lord keep you. The Lord make his countenance shine upon you and give you peace on every side. That is it for today. See you next Friday. In Jesus' name. Amen.